Have you ever wondered what really goes on inside the mind of a narcissist when they finally lose control? On the outside, they may still appear calm, collected, even arrogant. But deep inside, chaos takes over. Their mind becomes a storm of fear, shame, and desperation. Psychologists explain this loss of control as one of the most terrifying experiences for them. Control is the lifeblood of a narcissist. They use it to dictate emotions, twist narratives, and maintain superiority. But when that grip slips, their carefully crafted world unravels. Psychologists describe this as psychological freefall. They are so used to being in charge that even the slightest loss of control feels like drowning without air. In their mind, the first thought is denial. They tell themselves nothing has changed, that they are still in control. But deep down, they know the truth. This denial fuels their anger, pushing them to lash out or manipulate harder. Yet the more they try, the less effective their tactics become, feeding the spiral of collapse. As denial fades, fear creeps in. Narcissists fear abandonment more than anything. When control is gone, the possibility of being left behind becomes real. Psychologists explain that this fear is primal for them. It shakes their identity to the core. The mind of a narcissist under fear is filled with panic and obsessive thoughts. Anger soon follows. Inside their mind, they feel entitled to obedience, admiration, and control. Losing it feels like an insult they cannot tolerate. Psychologists call this narcissistic rage. It is not simple anger. It is the desperate cry of an ego being torn apart. In their head, they look for someone to blame, usually you. As rage simmers, shame rises. Shame is unbearable for narcissists. It reminds them they are not invincible, not superior, not as powerful as they pretend. Psychologists highlight this as narcissistic injury, a deep wound to their ego. Inside their mind, this shame feels like poison, something they cannot admit yet cannot escape. The loss of control also creates paranoia. They begin to imagine people are talking about them, mocking them, or plotting against them. In their mind, every silence becomes suspicion. Every look becomes judgment. Psychologists note this paranoia is a projection of their own guilt and insecurity, turning their thoughts into a prison. When they lose control over you, their mind replays every scenario. They obsessively wonder if you will come back, if they can lure you in again, or if you are telling others the truth. Psychologists call this obsessive rumination. It traps them in endless cycles of what if and how dare they, fueling their inner torment. Their mind also twists the past. Narcissists may rewrite memories, convincing themselves they were the victim, not you. Psychologists explain this as narrative distortion. By twisting the story, they try to protect their fragile ego. But even these rewritten memories cannot calm their fear, because the reality of losing control remains undeniable. At this point, the narcissist's mind becomes a battlefield. Denial, fear, anger, shame, paranoia, and obsession collide. Outwardly, they may still wear a smile or post confident images, but inside, they are collapsing silently. Psychologists affirm that this inner chaos is what makes losing control their worst nightmare. It is the destruction of their illusion. When control slips away, the narcissist's thoughts become scattered and chaotic. They cannot focus, because their mind is split between clinging to the past and fearing the future. Psychologists explain that this mental state is like a fractured mirror. Every reflection shows a distorted piece of themselves. Their ego, once inflated, now lies in fragments that no amount of pretending can glue back together. Inside their head, the silence is unbearable. No one is reacting, no one is answering, and no one is feeding their ego. For narcissists, silence is louder than screams. Psychologists describe this as psychological starvation. Without emotional reactions to consume, their thoughts spiral into panic. The absence of attention reminds them they are no longer in control. They begin to obsess about your freedom. In their mind, the thought of you living happily without them is intolerable. They imagine you laughing, healing, and thriving, and it eats them alive. Psychologists say this envy is corrosive, eroding their self-worth. The idea that you are fine without them is the greatest insult to their ego. At night, Their thoughts are relentless. Insomnia keeps them awake, and every memory becomes a weapon against them. They recall arguments, victories, and manipulations, but instead of feeling powerful, they feel powerless. Psychologists explain that narcissists cannot sit with themselves in quiet because it forces them to face the emptiness they've always run from. Another thought that dominates their mind is exposure. They fear that without control, you might tell others the truth about who they really are. Psychologists note this fear of exposure is linked to narcissistic mortification, a deep terror of being seen as flawed. In their mind, every whisper feels like a threat that their mask has fallen. They also imagine ways to regain control. Their mind races with strategies, messages, promises, lies, or even smear campaigns. Psychologists highlight this as hovering in thought form. Even before they act, they obsess over pulling you back, but the desperation behind these plans reveals their weakness. Inside, they know the control is gone. When these fantasies fail, despair sets in. Psychologists describe this despair as ego collapse. It is not sadness for losing you as a person, it is grief for losing their ability to control you. In their thoughts, this grief feels endless. They are mourning their own power, not the relationship. That is why their collapse feels hollow. The narcissist's mind also struggles with identity loss. Without control, who are they? Psychologists explain that narcissists lack a stable sense of self. Their identity is built on dominance and admiration. When that is stripped away, their thoughts turn dark. They feel invisible, ordinary, and fragile. Truths they cannot handle but can no longer deny. In their paranoia, they may imagine you plotting against them. Even if you are simply healing quietly, they see betrayal everywhere. Psychologists affirm this paranoia is a reflection of their guilt. They project their own lies and manipulations outward. In their mind, everyone becomes a potential enemy, and the isolation deepens their mental collapse. Ultimately, their inner world becomes unbearable. Psychologists emphasize that when narcissists lose control, they suffer more than they will ever admit. Their mind is filled with noise, shame, paranoia, and desperation. Outwardly, they may still act powerful, but inside they are breaking apart. This silent torment is the true cost of their lost control. When narcissists lose control, their mind begins to crave supply with desperation. They wonder endlessly, who can I use now? Who will give me attention? This hunger consumes their thoughts. Psychologists describe it as psychological withdrawal, like an addict without a drug. The more they think about supply, the emptier they feel, fueling their torment. They also fixate on rewriting the story. In their mind, losing control cannot be their fault, so they invent narratives where you are the villain. Psychologists explain this mental rewriting is a defense mechanism. By blaming you and their thoughts, they preserve their ego. But deep down, the cracks show. They know the truth lurks beneath the lies. Inside their head, they imagine confrontations that never happen. They picture you begging to return, or others validating their false image. These fantasies comfort them briefly, but reality always interrupts. Psychologists affirm that these mental rehearsals expose their desperation. They live more in imagined scenarios than in reality, because reality feels unbearable. Fear of abandonment becomes louder than anything else. Psychologists highlight that narcissists fear abandonment like death itself. In their mind, your absence is not just rejection, it is annihilation. They obsess over the idea that they are now unimportant, forgotten, irrelevant. This thought crushes them because it confirms the weakness they always tried to hide. Their mind also tortures them with comparisons. They picture you happy, fulfilled, or loved by someone healthier. These images torment them because they highlight everything the narcissist could never be. Psychologists say this envy corrodes their thoughts, creating an endless loop of bitterness. Instead of peace, their silence becomes filled with resentment. Narcissists often try to convince themselves they still have control. In their mind, they replay moments when you once returned, hoping history will repeat itself. But when silence continues, the reality sinks in. Psychologists note that this cognitive dissonance, clinging to old victories while facing new defeat, splits their mind, fueling inner chaos. Another haunting thought is the fear of exposure through your healing. They imagine you telling others the truth, and this terrifies them. Psychologists describe this as narcissistic mortification, where the ego feels destroyed by shame. Even if you remain silent, they cannot stop thinking that one day their mask will shatter completely, leaving them exposed. The loss of admiration also dominates their thoughts. They replay how people once looked at them with respect or awe. Now, without control, those looks are gone. Psychologists emphasize that admiration is oxygen to narcissists. In their mind, losing it feels like suffocating. The emptiness grows, reminding them that the illusion of greatness has ended. As their thoughts spiral, paranoia intensifies. They imagine conversations behind their back, whispers in rooms they never enter. Psychologists note this paranoia is self-created, born from guilt and shame. The narcissist knows how much pain they caused, so they assume others are exposing them. Their mind becomes a cage of suspicion and fear. Ultimately, the narcissist's mind becomes unbearable when control is gone. Thoughts of rage, shame, envy, and paranoia cycle endlessly. Psychologists affirm this inner chaos is the collapse of their false self. While they may pretend outwardly, inside they are prisoners of their own mind. Their loss of control is not loud. It is silently devastating. When control slips from their hands, narcissists feel time pressing against them. They think, what if I never get them back? What if my power is gone forever? Psychologists explain that this fear of permanence worsens collapse. Their mind obsesses over endings, and the thought that you are truly free becomes an unbearable echo in their head. They replay moments of dominance in their mind, clinging to them like trophies. Each manipulation, each victory once gave them pride. But now these memories feel hollow. Psychologists describe this as cognitive dissonance. What once fed their ego now exposes their weakness. Their own memories become painful reminders that the power is gone. Another destructive thought is the fear of invisibility. Narcissists live to be noticed, whether adored or hated. When control vanishes, their greatest terror surfaces, being irrelevant. Psychologists emphasize that irrelevance feels like psychological death. In their mind, being forgotten is worse than punishment, because it erases their identity completely. They also fear replacement. They imagine you meeting someone kinder, healthier, stronger. This thought eats at them, because it highlights their failures. Psychologists note this envy turns into obsession. In their mind, every possibility of your happiness without them becomes an insult. The fear of being replaced drives their thoughts deeper into despair. Inside, they also battle with self-image. Without control, they question, who am I without power? Psychologists explain that narcissists lack a stable identity. Their mind relies on control as proof of worth. When that proof disappears, they feel like ghosts in their own life, drifting between denial and shame, unable to hold themselves together. Silence becomes their loudest tormentor. They think about your lack of response, your refusal to engage, and it screams at them louder than any argument. Psychologists affirm that silence is lethal to narcissists because it shows indifference. In their thoughts, silence translates to powerlessness. Each unanswered moment deepens the cracks in their ego. They fear exposure most of all. In their imagination, they see others learning the truth about their lies and cruelty. Psychologists describe this as narcissistic mortification, ego death caused by humiliation. The mere thought of people seeing behind the mask terrifies them. Their mind replays this fear daily, amplifying their collapse in silence. In desperation, they fantasize about revenge. Inside their mind, they picture punishing you, proving you wrong, or regaining control through intimidation. Psychologists clarify these fantasies are symptoms of fear, not strength. They are desperate attempts to regain self-worth. But even in fantasy, the emptiness persists, reminding them their power is gone. Their inner world becomes exhausting. They cannot escape the cycle of envy, paranoia, rage, and shame. Psychologists explain that this exhaustion leads to further collapse. Their thoughts run endlessly, yet bring no relief. Even when they appear calm, inside they are drowning. Their mind has become their worst enemy, filled with torment. Ultimately, losing control leaves narcissists trapped in their own thoughts. Psychologists remind us that while they may appear fine outwardly, the truth is their mind is collapsing quietly. Their ego, once so inflated, cannot survive without control. Inside they are not kings or queens, they are prisoners of silence, haunted by their own fears. When control is gone for good, their thoughts turn darker. They begin to feel the weight of every bridge they burned, every relationship destroyed. Psychologists explain that narcissists rarely take responsibility, but in silence, guilt lingers. Their mind circles the truth they try to avoid. The empire they built on lies is crumbling, and they cannot rebuild it. The fear of loneliness consumes them. They picture a future without admirers, without anyone to manipulate, without an audience. Psychologists describe this as existential terror for narcissists. Their thoughts of isolation feel like death, because without control, they cannot define themselves. The mind that once felt powerful now feels abandoned and empty. They may imagine reconciliation, but even in those fantasies, the cracks show. In their mind, they see you coming back, but the fear remains that you will leave again. Psychologists affirm this cycle of longing and fear destabilizes them further. Their mind becomes a pendulum, swinging between hope and dread, neither bringing peace or relief. At times they retreat into silence, avoiding people altogether. Outwardly, it may look like calm, but inwardly their thoughts are filled with chaos. Psychologists note this withdrawal is not healing, it is collapse. In solitude they replay losses, rehearse lies, and battle shame. Their silence is not peace, it is the sound of their ego breaking. The narcissist's thoughts also betray desperation. They imagine dramatic gestures to win back control, public displays, reckless actions, manipulative ploys. But psychologists explain these are not real solutions. They are products of fear. The more they think of schemes, the more powerless they feel. Their mind loops endlessly, inventing plans that never restore control. Their ego collapse also brings envy of your healing. In their mind, they compare their torment with your peace. They imagine you sleeping soundly while they lie awake, and it enrages them. Psychologists emphasize this comparison fuels their suffering, because your healing exposes their brokenness. The thought of you free while they suffer is unbearable. In these moments, they also fear the truth about themselves. Without control, their inner emptiness is undeniable. Psychologists describe this as identity void. Their thoughts reveal the secret they've always hidden. Beneath the mask, there is nothing solid, nothing secure. Losing control forces them to face this void, and it terrifies them completely. Their mind becomes restless, like a cage they cannot escape. They think of the past, the future, the lies, the shame, all tangled together. Psychologists explain that this mental chaos is why collapse is so destructive. It is not one emotion, but many at once, attacking from within. Their own thoughts become their cruelest punishment. For survivors, this collapse is important to understand. It shows that narcissists are not invincible. Their mind is fragile, their ego unstable, and their control temporary. Psychologists remind us that their breakdown is not your fault. It is the natural outcome of manipulation and lies. Knowing this brings survivors clarity, strength, and freedom. In conclusion, inside the mind of a narcissist who has lost control is not strength, it is chaos, fear, and silence. They may pretend outwardly, but within, their ego collapses. Psychologists affirm this downfall is inevitable because no mask lasts forever. For you, the survivor, this truth is empowering. Their loss of control is your victory, and your freedom is the beginning of peace. When a narcissist loses control, their mind turns into chaos, fear, shame, and paranoia they can never admit. If this video gave you clarity, share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more insights into narcissistic behavior. Together we break the silence, expose the truth, and reclaim the peace we all deserve.